Welcome everybody, it's Scott from Oak Societies, here to bring you another awesome episode of content. The things I want to get into today are how I believe Trump knows more about ETs, the craft, the technology more than any president has before in history. And the reason why I think that is because his uncle, John Trump, was given documents from Nikola Tesla after he died, and I believe he had information that he didn't want to get out there, but he lied. We're going to get into all this stuff, but I'm going to tie all that together and how I believe because of Trump's uncle John that had access to these files may have given some knowledge to Trump, and he knows more than what he's letting on. The other thing I'm going to be getting into today, the topic is most of today's episode is going to be about ETs, UFOs, their tech, and the article I'm going to be getting into is written by Dr. Michael Salla. He goes over how a Navy Admiral was denied access to information on downed craft, how this technology was re-engineered by a corporation, a private corporation, and it was still denied access to how this was built and how any of this came about. He did get snippets of information which we're going to go over, but the documents that came out about that conversation with this admiral and this scientist have been leaked. It goes back all the way to 2002, and we're going to go into that a lot more. And it's going to be we're going to be covering about how governments compartmentalize their own programs to hide top secret things and to make whoever the person that thinks they're top secret really isn't. There's always a person above them, and that's going to go into cosmic clearance, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well. So first thing I'm going to be jumping into here is the backstory between Trump's uncle John G. Trump and Tesla. So when Tesla died, I believe in 1943, Tesla is obviously known for all the inventions he had. He was a brilliant mind, and this was right in the middle of World War II. U.S. government came in, swooped in a lot of his documents, a lot of his memoirs or his transcripts, and some of his technology also, and they wanted to see if they could utilize it at all to weaponize anything that he was coming up with, especially the talks about his death ray, which essentially is a particle beam weapon. So how this came about is the FBI got all these documents and they brought it to Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, who was head of MIT in 1945. And they wanted him to comb through these documents, see if there was anything feasible that they could find again to weaponize, because this was 1943, so we're right in the height of World War II. So they brought all these documents to John G. Trump. He had researched them, pored over them, obviously. So he had access to a lot of Tesla's documents. And there's some stories out there that say not all the documents were given over. Some of them were hidden. I haven't really looked into that yet, but I want to just go over to what Trump's uncle John had said about what he summarized after he read all of Tesla's documents. He says right here, Tesla's thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. So obviously that quote was, when he said that to the FBI, they're probably that was a downer. They were probably hoping for, we got this hard evidence of these awesome particle beam weapons. The blueprints are right here. We can create these. This is something that's doable. He didn't come to that conclusion. And Trump's uncle John really wasn't the only person that saw these documents. There was a division of opinion as to what Tesla's papers had shown, and the U.S. government, again, was divided on this. So what I'm going to get into here is, because I believe if Trump's uncle had really found something, would he want to tell the FBI? Would he want to get involved with that? Would he really tell the truth and get it out to the public that, there was something out there? There was definitely technology that could be made that's on a whole different level. And I don't believe he would have, but I could be wrong on that. But there was an Air Force general who had gotten also hold of these documents and was reviewing them, and he had a complete different opinion as to what Tesla was talking about as far as his particle beam weapon. And he wanted to seriously test it, see if what he was thinking of was correct, and if it could actually be made into a weapon. And this project was called Project Nick. Obviously, that was Tesla's first name. And right here, we go into that. It says, just after World War II, there was renewed interest in beam weapons. Copies of Tesla's papers on particle beam weaponry were sent to Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. An operation codenamed Project Nick was heavily funded and placed under the command of Brigadier General L. Craig to test the feasibility and of Tesla's concept. Details of the experiments were never published and the project was apparently discontinued. But something peculiar happened. The copies of Tesla's papers disappeared and no one knows what happened to them. And this is what I was going into before. Again, not just Trump's uncle had copies of these papers. This guy, General Craig here, also had copies of these papers. So this was in 1945. So while the World War II is going on, they're trying to test and see if these weapons could be of anything, could be a reality essentially. Nuclear bombs were already created, so why not create particle beam weapons, right? So it was really strange that at the end of all this, as the World War II was winding down, that this Project Nick was just discontinued, and the papers just disappeared. No one knew what the test results were. Nobody could figure out where these papers went. And again, of course, that's really sketchy. And it just makes you think, maybe this technology, maybe they figured something out with this technology, and the government just didn't want anyone else to know about it. And just like the secret space programs, they started to make this technology and keep it out of the public eye and from each other's eyes. On a need-to-know basis is a term that I come across a lot with these stories, and if you research this, you'll see it as well. So what I want people to really get, though, is that people always ask me when I bring up the secret space programs, if all this technology is being created as far as ET stuff, reverse engineering of craft, where is all this taken care of? Where is all this stuff happening? You hear the stories of ETs getting dissected and taken apart and horror stories like that. And this really, when you think about it and when you research it, a lot of this stuff is happening underground, underneath these Air Force bases, all over the country. It could be even all over the world. Who knows? But I do know that they're definitely underneath Air Force bases in this country. And I did a little bit more digging, and what I found was this Air Force base that we're talking about here, the Patterson Air Force Base. I came across an article about a whistleblower. His name was Raymond Szymanski. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name, but he goes into great detail about what he saw on the Air Force Base when he had worked there for 39 years. And he actually wrote a book called 50 Shades of Greys. And you can see Greys referring to the Greys, the aliens that they're probably the most popular alien in the public eye. And he goes into some things here about what was underground in that base, the things that were happening in that base, and he just goes into great detail about it, and I'll read some excerpts from here from it. It says right here, Raymond believes the UFOs and aliens from the infamous 1947 Roswell incident were brought to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio for inspection and kept in secret tunnels. The extraterrestrial researcher who worked as an engineer and senior scientist for 39 years detailed the full extent of the alien activity at the base in a book called 50 Shades of Grey. Let's see. And he goes into detail as the Szymanski guy says this guy Al is his mentor, and he asks, have you ever heard about our aliens, as he showed him around. This guy claims Al went on to tell him where there was a system of tunnels and vaults underground at the Air Force Base housing both living and deceased extraterrestrial beings. Speaking exclusively of the Sun Online, he said, I was assigned to the Avionics Laboratories Management Operations Office to work with my mentor Al, an industrial engineer and an MBA graduate. During my first week, Al provided me with some totally unexpected and unsolicited sage advice. And here's a picture. Let's see, he said that in 1947 there was a crash down in Roswell and they brought the machines and the aliens here for inspection, and they said they kept them in secret tunnels under the base. When I asked him how he came to know about this secret, he responded, everyone who works on the base knows. I was stunned. Me and a young co-op student barely into his first week was now initiated into a small select group of 10,000 people and given their most incredible secret ever. that we have aliens and they're trapped in our tunnels on our base. And people, if you really research, this is just one base in the United States. If you ever listen to the work of Emery Smith, he is also a whistleblower, and he was also one of these scientists that were assigned to dissect, take apart different specimens of all different kinds of ETs. And he goes into extremely great detail about the bases that he had entered. And it was an underground base in Colorado, also an Air Force base. So what I'm trying to get at is that this same Air Force base that Tesla, where these documents were, where this general was trying to come up with this technology of beam particle weapons, this all was happening at the same place. And for things just to disappear and to go into programs and you never hear them again, who knows what happened to those papers. And that technology has probably been made, wouldn't surprise me. And there was just some really interesting things I just found from this article here. And they go into, again, you can see pieces of the alien's leg here. Again, people always say this stuff could be made up. I've heard way too many testimonies of people who actually were in the military, who actually were taking apart all different kinds of beings. Some of them they said were clones, but that is a whole different episode. If you really want to check some cool stuff out, you can need to check out Emery Smith's work. He was in the military. He was actually taking apart these beings for about 10 years now. So what I think is going on here is that Trump's uncle, getting back to that, he knew about a lot of this stuff. Again, he read over these papers. Tesla was an absolutely brilliant mind. And I just think John, Trump's uncle, had gone into detail with him about these things. And you could always see Trump referencing his uncle. He says right here, "My uncle used to tell me about nuclear before nuclear was nuclear." Trump said in one interview, "My father's brother was a brilliant man. We have very good genetics. I mean, it's a good gene pool right here." Trump pointed ahead. "I have to do what I have to do." So these are just some quotes. I just think, especially with the QAnon movement and how that's so directly related to Trump as well, that he's got to know more than what most presidents have. I believe Kennedy did know about what was going on with these secret space programs, and he was offed. He was assassinated. I think he was the closest one. Eisenhower got an inkling of what was going on after that, and he knew before it was too late, and he knew that there's people with way more power than the president, and he knew it was already too late as far as these programs. And that is, again, another whole different episode. A lot of this stuff can be found in Above Majestic, the documentary, and that gives you a 2-hour breakdown of how all that happened. But as far as presidents knowing what's going on, I think Trump is in the know. There is a QAnon post I'm going to show here. And Anon did ask Q straight up, "Are we alone? Roswell, question mark. No. Highest classification. Consider the vastness of space." So that is one post from Q. This was back in September of 2018. And another Anon asked, "Did NASA fake the moon landings? Have we been to the moon since then? Are there secret space programs? Is this why the Space Force was created?" False. Moon landings are real. Programs exist that are outside of the public domain. Now, again, like I have said, everyone that knows Q is directly linked with the Trump administration. They're very tightly knit. Trump has never publicly admitted that he knows Q or brings up Q, but we all know he knows. And I just think this isn't hard proof. This is just my opinion. This is why I think Trump is in the know. He does want to create the Space Force, and I do believe the Space Force is going to be a more of a full disclosure that we are looking for. Not this crap from the Pentagon and the ATIP and to the Stars Academy garbage and the History Channel show that has Tom DeLonge in it. It's all garbage. They're giving you nothing compared to the information that's out there. So, just wanted to bring that all together there for you guys. That's what I think about Trump and how that's tied in with his uncle and Tesla. Again, I just think, who knows? I could be guessing. That's just my opinion. But moving on, I want to get into these articles by Dr. Michael Salla. Now this one here says right here, bombshell document confirms Navy Admiral was denied access to UFO crash retrieval program. And if you want to get into the documents, the link was here. I pulled them up here. I read over them. It's a lot of dialogue between the Admiral and Eric Davis, who was the lead scientist, and them trying to go over and trying to figure out why this Admiral could not get this information as to what was going on with this one particular UFO. And let's see here. So, Wilson here. He was a Joint Chief of Staff level fellow that I briefed while I was in Washington about a month ago. After he looked at all this and heard witnesses, he turned to us and said, "Well, I have no doubt this is true, but I am horrified that I didn't know about it." So Wilson here had heard information that there was something going down with the UFO crash, and he wanted to know more about it. And he was kind of distraught that he wasn't being told from his senior advisors that this was going on. And it says right here, because of his position and very, very senior, I can't say who it was, but a very, very senior position. And then they begin to come to grips with, well, who the hell does know about it? What is going on here? And then they became frightened. So this guy, Dr. Michael Greer, he's the guy that, if you look him up, he's the creator of the CE5 initiative, which used meditation to initiate contact with ETs. He was explaining there was a document from the NRO that was describing this craft and who was in the know and what was going on here. And it goes over some code names. Blue Fire, which is a code name 1991, Commander's Net, Royal Ops, Cosmic Ops, and here we have the term Cosmic Clearance. You've heard of this? It's not a myth, it's real. Mage Ops, Magi, it's Magic Ops. It goes through a whole bunch of them. Nellis Division, all these code numbers, and you go down to get some really interesting things. This secret document went to the Admiral Tom Wilson prior to a meeting, and he actually recognized one of these entities and made an inquiry and was being run by a contractor. And the contractor, one of these corporate contractors, when he called them up, had said, "I'm Admiral Tom Wilson." And at the time, he was head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want people to realize that. This guy was he was up there. And he's like, what the heck is going on? Why haven't I been told about this? So he said, as we read on here, I want to be read into this project. Guess what happened? They said, "Sir, you don't have a need to know. This is the guy who's supposed to give the intelligence briefings for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. He was told you don't have a need to know." And Admiral Wilson said, "God damn it, if I don't have a need to know, who does?" They said, "Sir, we cannot discuss this with you further." They hung up, blocked his line. This all happened before the stand-up meeting I did for him with Edgar Mitchell, 6 Man to Walk on the Moon, myself, my military advisor, and a few other people met with Admiral in what's called the stand-up briefing. I was doing the presenting. It was supposed to be 45 minutes. So guys, this is it goes on to talk about more of their dialogue and what was discussed between this corporation that had access to the ET craft that crashed, and this guy, the general here, had no access to it, and he was so distraught that he was just so upset. He couldn't believe it. He had no idea that there was clearances like we see here that Dr. Greer talks about, cosmic clearance. And he had no idea what it was, and just could not believe that he was not allowed access to this program. So that this article goes into more of that. And the next article here I want to talk about. So the Admiral was trying to figure out what was going on. He had heard some rumors going around that an ET craft had crashed. This was back in 1997, as you can see here. We're now in 2002, and he was just trying to get to the bottom of it. It took him a very long time. And what was going on was this craft that had crashed, scientists of who we believe is Lockheed Martin were reverse engineering the craft. They were trying to make their own version of it, in which they successfully did. But right here, we're going to go into some of the dialogue that he had with this corporation. Right here, Wilson went on to describe the aerospace company that ran the classified reverse engineering effort without naming it. Who is the project contractor or USG agency that runs the program? An aerospace technology or contractor, one of the top ones in the US, replied. Who? Core secret, can't tell. Defense contractor? Yes, the best one of them. Now, the reference to the best one of them firmly points to Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division, which has a long track record of successfully working on cutting-edge aerospace programs. For example, Skunk Works former director Ben Rich was fond of ending lectures by declaring, "We now have the technology to take ET home." And this was back in 1997, guys, and trust me, this has been going on probably since the 40s. When Wilson then explained what happened when he discovered which company was running the classified UFO program and contacted it to gain access. The scientist said, "What happened with your found contractor?" Wilson said, "I made several calls, first to Paul, Mike, and Perry to confirm I had the right contractor and program manager to talk to. Did they confirm? Yes. Then what happened? Made 3 calls to the program manager, one of them conference call with the security director and corporate attorney." And they go into that. Wilson next explains how he was denied access to the classified UFO program by the 3 corporate officials. "I told Threesome I wanted a formal briefing tour, was exploiting my regulatory authority as deputy director, assistant joint chief of staff, told them may not being briefed was oversight they needed to correct, I demanded." So essentially Wilson's just pleading to this corporation, you need to tell me what's going on. This is my job. I'm supposed to know what this stuff is. So the corporation, who we think is Lockheed Martin, then said we need to discuss this in person, and then Wilson went out to fly. He flew out to meet them. He met in their conference room in their secure vault. 3 of them showed up. 3 guys with whom you had telecom. Wilson replies yes. Goes into the security director, program director, corporate attorney, and they called themselves the Watch Committee. Now going into further dialogue, Wilson said after the episode of formal agreement was struck with Pentagon people to prevent this in the future, we don't want to repeat. Special criteria were established in agreement, a special circumstance that must meet rigorous access criteria set by contractor committee. No USG personnel are to gain access unless they meet the criteria, and it goes into that criteria. The Watch Committee told Admiral Wilson that despite him being a deputy director of the DIA, listen to this, guys, and vice director of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that he was not on the bigot list. Those with the need to know access, who could be briefed about the UFO program. So there was a protocol to be on the need to know for this, and he did not fit the protocol. There was a list of people that fit the protocol, and they go over that list. It says right here, Wilson's tickets alone were not enough. I didn't meet the special criteria, so need to know authorization was not being granted. He continued arguing. Let's see here. Then they pulled out their bigot list to convince me otherwise, several pages long, dated 1990, updated in 1993. The transcription goes on to cover Wilson and Davis' conversation about names on the bigot list and who in the Pentagon and White House was allowed access. So I'm surprised they even showed Wilson this list. They probably had to give him something to get Wilson off this corporation's back. So he did see some of the names on the list, and the scientist EWD here asked him who was on it. Did you recognize any names? The Admiral says that is core secret. He couldn't tell them. Willing to say that most were program employees, names and titles. Civilians didn't recognize any military personnel could be there. And he asked, was there any politicians? This is important, guys. Said no. No White House names. No president, no congressional people, no congressional staffers. Any in Clinton or Bush senior administrations? Wilson said no, but a handful of names were Pentagon individuals I recognized, a few from AUSTAT, one from another department, and another at the NSC, who was Pentagon SES employee. So stunningly, Wilson learned that no members of the Congress or executive branches of government were briefed about the corporate UFO program. Only a few Pentagon officials. Let's see, and I just want you guys to really understand that. People are always saying, how does the government not know about UFOs? How do they hide all this stuff? And I'm going to go into that. But right here, this was just one crash and one re-engineered craft that Lockheed Martin had designed. And right here, this explains it all. There was no White House names, no president, no congressional people or staffers. No one in the White House, not the president, had access, and they did not have the credentials to view this tech. And that is super important, guys. And that's why I believe, because QAnon knows what's going on with ETs. They're part of that, full disclosure. That's why I follow Q and their drops and things like that. And they're closely related with Trump, who wants to who is trying to make the Space Force a separate branch of the military. And I believe that is going to be used to bring on full disclosure to the public in a slow but truthful way. But again, I want people to understand that the president did not have access to these programs, nor did anyone in the White House. Only a few privileged people in the Pentagon had access to these programs. And outside of that, it is run by privately organized corporations who have no oversight. And that is the problem. And that's why I think Space Force is going to be a very important thing. But people ask, how do they hide all this stuff? I'll show you right here. So documents leaked by Edward Snowden. The method of hiding the most highly classified programs behind less classified ones was verified in one of the NSA documents leaked by Snowden called Century Eagle. It graphically depicted how exceptionally compartmented information, ECI, and intelligence community classification similar to an unacknowledged SAP used by the Pentagon would be hidden behind a non-ECI program, similar classification status to a conventional SAP. So to put that in simpler terms, guys, there's less classified information. Those have names for those programs. People think that program is specifically for that, but there's another deeper program that's hidden beneath that. And the only people that know about that are the ones working in it. So this gives a picture of an umbrella of Century Eagle, and you have all the little programs here underneath it. And guys, I just wanted to get into this article here too a little bit. Again, this is describing Century Eagle. I'm going to read some of this, and it goes, on October 10th, Peter Massis and Laura Poitras, writing for The Intercept, released more PowerPoint slides from leaked NSA documents concerning highly classified programs that are hidden from the public. These documents were originally released by Edward Snowden. That Century Eagle is used as an umbrella term for hiding the NSA's most sensitive program that are classified, exceptionally controlled information. Several PowerPoint slides show how ECI programs are hidden beneath less classified programs as a cover. The leaked documents support claims made 16 years earlier by Dan Sherman. He was another whistleblower before Edward Snowden, who revealed that he worked in a secret communications program with alien extraterrestrial entities that was hidden beneath less classified NSA programs as a cover. So here's an example, guys. NSA 16 years ago, this has been going on for many years before this, had knowledge and were working on alien extraterrestrial cases. And the brief sheet of the Century Eagle reads as this: you are being indoctrinated on Century Eagle. The 2004 document begins before going on to list the most highly classified aspects of its various programs. It warns the details of the Century Eagle programs are to be shared with only a limited number of people, and even then only with the approval of one of a handful of senior intelligence officials, including the NSA director. So guys, you have a program that you're indoctrinated into. It's used as a cover, but really what's going on behind that cover is the dark program, which you're actually doing that's what your job is. And the only people that you talk about are probably less than a handful of people. And those people that you have to go to as your boss, I guess you would say, they have to go to people, and so on and so forth, and only certain people know knowledge of certain things, and that's it. So that's how they keep things tightly controlled. And just an interesting point here, let's see. Dan Sherman talks about in his book, this is the whistleblower I had said before, came before Snowden, says, when someone is assigned to an alien project, they are also assigned to a collateral black mission, cover mission. One of the reasons for this is if someone were to reveal any alien information by extension, they would most likely reveal something about the cover project and would be on the basis that someone would be prosecuted for divulging classified information. And guys, again, this links perfectly to what Emery Smith's story was. He was a surgeon in the military, and his cover mission was working on cadavers, dead soldiers, and working with stem cells and things like that. So he did that part-time, and then right in the middle of what he would be doing on a normal day of work, he'd be taken away right in front of doctors and said, okay, he'd be escorted to this underground base, and then he would actually be doing the real work of dissecting and taking samples from ETs, light beings, a bunch of things, interdimensional beings, and he goes into detail about all that stuff. But it perfectly lines up with what Sherman's talking about here about having a cover mission. And when Emery was doing these things, he was told that he cannot ask questions. He did his job. He had a list of requirements for that day, and that's it. And this sounds exactly what this is. There's a cover mission when you were assigned to an alien project, and if you were to say anything, you probably disappeared, or who knows what. But this is what I wanted to get into. And again, this is the NSA that knows about this stuff. Pentagon officials know these things. And guys, it just drives me crazy when I see articles like this. Former head of Pentagon's secret UFO program has some strange stories to tell. And they go into them not really knowing if they're UFOs or not. This is what people are seeing. And the alien phenomena is just, they really don't have an opinion on it. And my thing is, they're blatantly lying because they do know what's going on. They have known for decades, and these programs are out there. They've been running for decades and decades. We have reversed the technology, and it's just, the lying is just out of control. And now you're seeing all these articles about UFOs coming out, and you have to ask yourself, well, why is this happening now? For me, it's probably just a big distraction of the deep state, a distraction of the deep state. They're trying to start a war right now with Iran. It's not going to work. So the last card that they possibly could have is having some UFO disclosure, partial disclosure, I guess you could say, and having shows on the History Channel about with Tom DeLonge again, saying things about craft going so fast that would be breakneck speeds and all this crap. It's all garbage. It's not the full truth. The full truth's out there. This tech exists. This anti-gravity tech exists. We have made it. There is free energy out there, and it all exists. So I just wanted to bring light to this, guys, and just show you these articles. And you have to really do your own research, and don't just take my word for it. The answers are out there, and you just got to do your own thing. And if you like what I have to say, keep following my content. That'd be great. So that's gonna wrap it up for me today, guys. My channel is growing at a decent pace. I don't do anything paid as far as advertising for it. We're up to almost 40 subscribers, and it's been almost 3 weeks already, so that is really awesome. I know when I started this, I only had like 2 or 3, and I was like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna grow or not, but we're gonna keep it going, and I'm really enjoying this, and I hope you guys can get something out of this content and really start waking up to what's going on in the world. Again, do your own research, keep your eyes and ears open, enjoy your Tuesday day, and stay woke.